We love a good villain. Sephiroth, Handsome Jack, Emmett Selk, and so many more. But we need to acknowledge that in storytelling, not every antagonist is a villain. A villain is someone who is evil, but not every antagonist is evil. This is why I became fascinated with the Shadowlord in NieR Replicant. When you learn his story, you realize that although he is the antagonist, he is not evil. Therefore, not a villain. But then who is the big bad evil villain of NieR Replicant? Sometimes in storytelling, there is no villain. Or maybe the villain is not even a person. I remember back in high school during an English class, we read the story of Oedipus, a Greek tale of an orphan who grew into a man and unexpectedly killed another man who turned out to be his biological father, and married a woman who turned out to be his biological mother. Once Oedipus hears of this revelation, he would gouge out his own eyes due to the shame that he felt. Yeah, this story is very grim and unsettling. Afterwards, the class was to write an essay answering the question, who is the villain in Oedipus' story? Myself and I think 2 or 3 other students got the correct answer. Fate. Fate was the villain in Oedipus' story. I went on this slight tangent because just as Oedipus was a victim of fate's cruelty, the Shadowlord is a victim of circumstances. Too many life-changing events that were outside of his control. And what actions he did take were never out of malice. To understand the Shadowlord and his actions, we must first understand the world of the NieR series. The video here onward will be filled with spoilers, including Drakengard's ending E, the NieR Replicant CD drama, also known as Lost Versus and the Red Sky, and NieR Replicant. For all the lore enthusiasts out there, I will not be going into every small detail since I want the information presented to be digestible for newcomers. And with that out of the way, let us start with Drakengard's ending E. In modern-day Tokyo, a giant falls from the sky and a dragon flies alongside it. The giant would disintegrate and the dragon would be shot down with military weaponry. What started as a joke ending for Drakengard would become the beginning of the NieR series. Now we enter the NieR CD drama. The death of the giant and dragon would introduce magic to the world, but also a new disease that would be dubbed white chlorination syndrome. In-game, we also know it as the Black Scrawl. For those diagnosed with white chlorination syndrome, there were one of 2 outcomes. Either the person disintegrates, or they go berserk. The disease was beyond scientists' comprehension, but those same scientists did learn how to harness magic, setting the foundation for Project Gestalt and the Grim War Project. Project Gestalt was a process where body and soul would be separated, in hopes that white chlorination syndrome would naturally die out on its own. The Grim War Project was an experiment to develop magic books, which required the souls of sacrificed children. These books would be used to force the body and soul to rejoin. However, the organization in charge of Project Gestalt and the Grim War Project did note the possibility of a lingering soul going berserk, similar to those who were diagnosed with white chlorination syndrome. But at the same time, there was also a possibility of a supposed chosen one, whose DNA could prevent these sudden violent rampages. This is when NieR, the character, gets involved. NieR and his sister Yona attended a charity event to receive food and medicine for Yona's illness. But the people receiving from the charity event were also given books. It turns out these books were from the Grimoire Project. This was a live experiment in disguise to find the Chosen One. The charity event would not last long, as one of the recipients had their body and soul forcefully separated, with the soul going on a violent rampage. NieR and Yona would flee from the scene with grimoires in hand. This now leads to the prologue scene in NieR Replicant. I did a whole video on this scene alone, so go ahead and check that out. A young boy inside an abandoned grocery store trying to protect his younger sister from hostile creatures. NieR had just seen what dangers the mysterious books were capable of, but he was willing to take a risk. In an effort to protect Yona, he touches the book and makes a pact with Grimoire Noir. Unlike that one individual from the charity drive, NieR was able to resist his soul being forced out of his body and the violent tendencies that would have followed after. NieR had the DNA that Project Gestalt was looking for. With NieR now being able to harness magic and Grimoire Noir, he would be the one who reemerges humanity's souls with their bodies. Going back to the NieR CD drama, NieR, the character, would volunteer for the Gestalt Project. He provides his DNA to prevent the lingering souls from going berserk, and in return the scientists would find a cure for Yona's illness. 5 years go by and no progress towards a cure had been made. The various scientists and politicians involved in Project Gestalt tried to reassure NieR that he would be humanity's savior. But NieR did not care for this messiah status. To uplift his mood, NieR was then told that a cure would be found within 1,000 years. Despite the painfully long wait, he decides that he would continue living and contributing to the Gestalt Project. After all, Yona is the only family he had left. NieR would have his body and soul separated, with his soul becoming what we know as the Shadowlord, and his soulless body being the character that we play as throughout the game. During the 1,000-year wait, the soulless bodies would gain their own sentience. They had developed their own cultures, communities, and identities. But they would also fear creatures that they called Shades. In truth, the Shades were the souls from the Gestalt Project. The souls only wanted to return to their bodies, but they were instead met with hostility. We now return to NieR Replicant, where 1,412 years have passed. NieR, now the Shadowlord, loses his patience. He waited more than the 1,000 years that he was promised. No cure was ever found, and the scientists who worked on Project Gestalt had passed away. The Shadowlord chooses to take measures into his own hands. He begins by kidnapping the soulless body of Yona. This angered the NieR that we play in-game, and for the next 5 years, he went searching for the Shadowlord's hideout. During those 5 years, the Shadowlord was slowly remerging Yona's body and soul. It would only be time until she would awake. Until finally, NieR's body would confront the Shadowlord. This was the Shadowlord's opportunity to take his body back, wake up Yona, and save the human race. But that did not happen. Yona wakes up and tells the Shadowlord that she was willing to give her own life so that her sentient body can live a life of its own. And she does. The two grimoires from the Grimoire Project that the Shadowlord needed to save humanity destroyed each other. In the end, what was it all for? The reunion with his sister was short-lived and somber. Without the grimoires, humanity was fated to go extinct. The person who was the Shadowlord's motivation had abandoned him. The Shadowlord's mission was a failure. Project Gestalt as a whole was a failure. What do you do in this scenario? What can you do? Understandably, the Shadowlord gives up. hope I convinced you that the Shadowlord is not a villain, as none of his actions were deemed evil. Although I think you can argue that his kidnapping of Yona is a dick move, even if his motivations were understandable. So who is the villain of NieR Replicant? Life? The world? Fate? Some abstract idea that no person can control. I think the phrase, life is cruel and unfair, is applicable here. Life gave NieR a bad hand of cards. NieR tried to make the most of it, but he was doomed regardless. And this is why I say, the Shadowlord is a victim of circumstance.
Thanks for always being there for me. Oh, here. I brought your hat.
Thanks, Yona.